All right, guys, so I am right now doing the Bright Angel hike, and we have stopped along the way to do this little painting. I'm about to do this 2 by 4 inch mini painting. This is my first time on this trip filming a mini painting, so I'm really excited. We visited Zion and Bryce before this trip, and now we're in the Grand Canyon. So I wanted to show how I would do a quick color study. And the goal for this little mini is not to get a detailed painting, but to really capture the quick color notes, because really if I'm gonna do a 6 mile hike, I don't have time to sit down and do like a 1 hour painting. That would just eat up a lot in the day, but I wanna do a quick color sketch. Now I am painting on a 2 by 4 wooden board, these kind of wooden craft boards that I got from Amazon. I will put the link below in the bio, but I got these. They're recommended by my friend Michelle Lynn, who's a fellow gouache artist, and I really love them. It's my first time painting with them on this trip, and I love the way the gouache comes onto the wood. It's my first time painting on wood. It's very different from cold press illustration board, but really, really cool all the same. So I'm really excited to dig in. So what I'm painting in front of me is this kind of orange ridge. I have a quick sketch in front of me. And I'm painting this kind of prominent, more orange ridge in the back, or in the front, with these more kind of atmospheric pinkish bluish cliffs in the back. So I picked a relatively simple subject matter because I can more distinctly tell between the midground and the background. Right now, around 1 to 2 p.m., everything is still kind of, there's not a lot of atmosphere, there's not a lot of shadows and depth going on. Once it hits more sunset, you'll start to see those really beautiful graphic blue shadows, but right now, everything looks quite similar. There's not a lot of value change in the background. And I'll show some pictures to demonstrate what I'm talking about. So I picked a relatively more easy subject matter so that I could distinctly tell what's in the foreground, midground, and background with value. So I'm gonna go ahead and start off with my midground cliff. I am mixing cadmium orange, which I found extremely helpful for this trip, painting the Bryce Canyon rocks and these Grand Canyons. It's very hard to get that orange, and I found that I really needed cadmium orange, which is a color that I don't actually usually use. So I was really happy to find this sort of new color that I was like, how do I get that bright vibrancy? And I realized that I really need this color. So I added that onto my palette pretty early on. You can see the light is coming from the top-ish left, I believe. So everything is in shadow, casting a shadow kind of in these areas and these areas, which I've kind of shaded in. I'm gonna go ahead and mix some ultramarine and sky blue for the shadow, maybe a little bit of alizarin crimson to darken that, and maybe a little bit of cadmium orange or yellow ochre just to desaturate that dark purple a tad. And I am starting off with my round brush. Now, most of the time I will start off with my flat brush. In this case, I decided to switch it up a little bit just to see how things would go. And you can see, I love this brush because I can really dance with it. I'm also painting at a rather odd angle right now because the camera I had to turn a little bit for the camera. So I'm kind of at a left side to my angle. Now you see, or left side to my painting, it's a little bit of a different angle. But you can see I just put a little bit of blue there, just to lighten the shadow a little bit. And again, I'm not going for something detailed. Once I know that I've captured the essence of what I'm painting, the hardest part, but the part to know when to stop is really crucial. It's usually a hard part too, because sometimes you want to keep going and going. You think, this mark might do it better, this mark, and sometimes that's true, and sometimes, many times, I've just sort of been like, dang it, I should have stopped way before. So the point of these paintings is to just really get the essence of what I'm seeing. And you can see how creamily, if that's even a word, that the paint is sort of nicely going on. There's a lot of dry shrubbery going on in this sort of cathedral looking rock. So I mixed sky blue, which is another color that I brought back that I haven't used in a while, with a little bit of yellow ochre and permanent yellow to get that green. I don't actually have green on my palette, and so I'm mixing green that way with different shades of yellow and blue. So I'm kind of getting these desaturated tones. You can see I'm just sort of dry brushing these sort of drier, yellowish rock sides of the cliff right there. And there's actually two ridges going on right here that I'm gonna mix back a little bit of the cadmium orange, a little bit of white to lighten and also desaturate at the same time, because cadmium orange by itself would be a little bit too saturated for this rock face that I'm dealing with here. So I'm just brushing that in. And it's a very easy way to also just brush in a little bit of rock texture as well. So brushing that in right there. Now I'll probably start to see that my drawing has some issues because I always am too quick in my sketching. But let me see if I can just sort of extend that rock face a little bit right there. Now, before I move on to anything else, I'm just going to establish just going to establish the shadow right there a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and actually start painting the background. Maybe I'll switch to my flat brush this time to show you guys how I would use that. So for the background, it's good that you don't see my palette right now because it's quite horrendous, but it works for me. This background, I'm mixing a little bit of Brilliant Pink from Holbein and Sky Blue, because there is a lot of pink, a lot of fuchsia-ish. I'm not sure if I can, let's just put that down for now. I'm just gonna put in big blocks of shape. Just get sort of and I'm using this also to carve in those rocks in the back. So you can see I'm actually holding my brush at the very tip, at the very end. I don't like to hold it near the brush tip, like not like this, right? That doesn't give me, it makes me more stiff. However, if I move my hand outward, I can be much more lyrical and much more loose and free with my brushes. So, my brush strokes, I'm sorry. It's hard to talk and paint at the same time. So I'm taking some of the previous color I have there. And that's pushing it back a little bit. I do think it's a little bit too purple. So I'm actually going to, let's see, mix a little bit of maybe cadmium orange with, what am I doing? Maybe just put a little bit of orange in the back, just to sort of warm up the background just a tad. And the tops of these cliffs are, now I haven't decided if I want to make it lower. I think I am going to make it higher. So the tops of these cliffs are a little bit bluer in the background. So I'm mixing sky blue, ultramarine, maybe a teeny bit of yellow ochre just to desaturate the blue a little bit. And I'm just going to just brush down. I'm going to do downward strokes like this, making sure that my value is not too dark. Because then that will push this rock forward and we need it to go in the background, right? We want to always remember value over color first thing. Now there is a deep kind of a cave right here, not a cave, whatever you call it. Oh, that was too light. But I'm trying to be aware of when my values might be getting, like see that blue might have been a little bit too dark. It's very hard to move my hand right now because it's a little cold. Sitting in the shade, which is nice. So I'm just adding some quick shadow pockets right here. There's some beautiful graphic shadows and I kind of want to see how much I can carve that in very briskly. So I'm still using my flat brush. Might actually start using my round brush to start carving some of those really nice graphic blue shadows in. Now the sky is a nice, beautiful, serene blue. So I'm just mixing a little bit of lemon yellow, actually primary yellow in this case, sky blue and a lot of white because it's not exactly a pure-ish blue. It has a little bit of yellow to me in it. And that is a trick I'll do a lot of times with the sky. You can see I can't quite get that right there, so I'll fix it later. I'm just trying to get as much as I can in like that. So right now, what I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, it's a good sketch. You can obviously still see a lot of my lines. So now it's kind of fine tuning those lines and covering that up a little bit more. I'm switching back to my flat brush now. And I'm just going to be slowing down a teeny bit and thinking about refining some areas where I can just add and distinguish between what is that foreground rock, the background rock. I must mention that the light is changing, by the way. There was light and now that rock is not as vibrant in the light. So of course you always got to account for that. Another reason why you can't sit here and do another like 2-hour painting, because the light is constantly changing. So yeah. So what was I saying? I was distracted by the light. I forgot. So what happens when you do live stuff? It'll come back to me. So when the light is changing like this, and you're thinking, Tiffanie, what do? Do you just give up? Do you just keep going? What do you do? I try to paint from photo memory, which is why I think it's really important to train your eyes to be able to see and remember things so that if the light does change, you're like, that's no problem. I've painted a lot of times after sunset, kind of in the shadow, when the light has already gone, because sunset is my favorite time to paint. And sometimes, because I'm not so focused on copying the environment, I've actually created better paintings kind of based on my own photo memory and what I observed before the light went away, because I'm not as tethered to the environment. And so that has actually been quite interesting sometimes. Now, one thing that's very interesting I will point out in regards to this particular scene in front of me is that the value, I can squint, the value between this and this is not that much different, I think. Maybe there's some values that are slightly darker. The temptation would be to make this background really light or maybe this part really dark, but when I'm squinting, I'm seeing that is not really the case. So I really want to push that subtlety and that value in those values a little bit. I'm going to separate the distinction through color. Okay, the background is a lot more pink and blue. The foreground is a lot more warmer with oranges. So that's how I'm going to separate it. Not so much through darker and lighter value. My paints are kind of drying right now. So in that case, I'll just spray a little bit. And I think this value that I was mixing, that's already too, let's say it's too dark. So let's see, I'm just sort of, there's a lot of detail going on in the background and I'm really trying to simplify. So what I'm gonna do is trying to find a clean slab of white. Very important to have a lot of white in gouache. There's some areas that are just a little bit lighter that we can just accentuate some of those rock cliffs maybe just a little bit. Get those sense of ridges. And then what I see is that there is a shadow coming down here just to give them impression. You'll be surprised how much just a quick slab, a quick brush stroke can just indicate so much. And that's why I'm such a big advocate of using big brushes. So here I'm just lightening up a little bit, just accentuating maybe here as well, mixing a little bit more white, maybe a little bit more primary yellow in this case. I wonder if that will do the trick, I don't know. There's a little bit of light coming in here, but I think the light has come back. Shifting light. I'm not super concerned with covering all my pen marks. I personally kind of like it when you can see a lot of the pen marks, so I don't know, I guess this part is just mainly bothering me, not really because of the pen marks, but because my planes are kind of not described well. I'm more concerned about that. But I'll just see if it can indicate a little bit more of the shrubbery. You can see the shrubbery in the back. I'm not even thinking about shrubbery. I'm thinking about grouping and distinct masses. Now maybe here just a separate thing. Another color I don't have here that actually would work well for the shadows is burnt sienna. What I'm using to sort of desaturate the shadow complements is just cadmium orange. So I'm using cadmium orange instead of burnt sienna, but that would be another option. I don't like what happened there, so I'm actually going to, I was trying to add too much detail. There's a lot of little ridges, and I thought maybe I could add that, but it just looks funny to me. So I'm gonna just kind of erase that and just sort of put that back out. Maybe add another ridge right there, like that, and maybe, now I am leaning back. You can't see, but I am leaning back at some points and assessing. So even it's hard for me to be like, okay, I'm done. You know, you always want to keep working at it. So that ledge looks really funny, but the value is just so damn tricky. The value is so, you just need a slightly lighter value just to distinguish maybe the edge of that. Right there. Now actually what's really interesting, and I think the lighting changed, this actually got quite beautifully dark right there, and I'm actually think that's going to be the last stroke I'm going to do. So I'm going to add slightly darker ridge right here, also just to cover up some of those pen marks. So it's a very tricky color because it's not exactly a super saturated blue, I think. And of course, I think my sky has dried a little bit too dark, so I'm going to just maybe lighten that up a tad. I think this is the part where I start overworking it. So I'm just going to lighten that up. And yeah, the lighting is changing quite a bit, so. For 3/4 of my paintings, I honestly like how they are halfway through, and I don't like them anymore. So it's always like that. All right, so I think, yeah, the light has changed quite completely. So when the light changes like this, you always have to ask yourself, okay, what do you want to capture? Do you want to stay true to what you saw? Do you want to play around with certain shadows that are, you know, now forming? Because the Grand Canyon, as you guys know, you know, it's lots of things. I just realized there's a triangular peak behind this whole thing. I never noticed that before because of the changing light. So now this is quite distracting to me. Oops. Oops. Just drop something. So I think I have to do some design things really quick just to maybe, I want to just, might potentially be ruining this, but squeeze out a little bit of Holbein pink, a little bit of alizarin. Trying to get that pinkish color to form. Yeah, I think I'll have to take a break from this and then sort of figure it out later because the light has changed so much. But that is how I approach a loose 2x4 study. And I hope you guys enjoyed that. Actually, I think that blue addition was quite nice. I really love sky blue for just sort of adding this rich kind of shadow color. So much design that you could do. I'm always thinking about design over anything and not always executing it correctly, but I think those two additions actually help solidify it quite a lot, so. Just kind of popping that. There, and actually this dried way too dark, which is a problem with gouache, you get a lot, so. Funny, I squeezed cadmium red and did not even use it. So I'm just lightening that peak up a little bit. Actually, I think that helps a lot. Cadmium red, I don't use a lot. I said I was done, right? And I don't know if we're still going. Are we still going, Justin? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I said I was done. Clearly, I wasn't, which is what usually happens in the actual world. So you guys are getting the raw process, eh? So I mixed cadmium red and somehow that sort of desaturated the sky blue a little bit, and I think that did push it back. Now the lighting that I was used to came back. So there's actually a lot more light stuff going on, the ridges. I'm just going to take that all out because I know if I tried to paint any of that, it would look miserably awful. So you can see with this round brush, I'm just trying to dry brush and fake that sort of light texture in the back. Actually, the light is not exactly the same. It's actually a cool cast shadow coming forward here, which might be fun to sort of indicate. So I'm mixing alizarin crimson, ultramarine, and yellow ochre to desaturate it a little bit, but it's quite a warm shadow. So maybe we will just place that in the foreground for funsies. All right, now we can call it done because the light has changed. So as you can see here, this is what I was painting in my 2x4 mini study. The light is a little bit different right now. It does keep changing as clouds are coming and going. And so when I was painting, that foreground or midground kind of dome-shaped cathedral rock was actually lit in light, and right now it's more in shadow. So there's the light was coming from the top left, and then it was casting really beautiful graphic shadows to the left of it. And so I really want to capture that warmer kind of midground, foreground, and then that kind of cooler background kind of mixed with these fuchsia colors of these kind of fuchsia, orange, some really graphic, beautiful blue shadows in the background. So I wanted to just kind of recap what I was mixing in my thought process for creating this painting. So for the foreground rock, the dome rock, which again, I'll remind you, the lighting is completely different. I was mixing cadmium orange, white, a little bit of yellow to get the light shapes in that rock. And then for the shadow part of that rock, I was mixing sky blue, a little bit of ultramarine, and cadmium orange because it's a complement, and I'm desaturating that blue just a tad bit to keep that local color within those shadow colors. I don't want to make it too cool because that will just totally separate the light and the shadow from each other. And then for the background rocks, you can see there's a beautiful sort of gradient of these like oranges and pinks. I use Holbein Brilliant Pink, that's the brand. I usually use Winsor Nude, I use Holbein Brilliant Pink. I really like that pink. A little bit of Permanent Yellow Deep, Lemon Yellow, Sky Blue for the top ridges of those rocks, and a little bit of Lemon Yellow and White for those lighter parts of those ridges. Now again, there's a lot of texture and detail going on in those background rocks as well, but my job in this 2x4 study was to really squint and just capture the main elements of those colors right there. So I didn't want those background rocks to compete with the foreground dome-like rock. That was my focal point. So you can't really tell now, but when I was painting, the value of that foreground dome-shaped rock was actually, the light part of that rock was actually quite similar to the background in some places. Right now, you can probably tell more of a stark difference. But when I was painting it, they're quite similar in value, the light part of that rock with the background colors. So I had to separate those elements more with color than with value when I was doing my painting, if that makes sense. So that's a little bit of my thought process that was going on when I was completing this painting. It was a challenge, but it was really fun to do. It's my first time here in Grand Canyon hiking, so this is all new subject matter to me, like I said. But I learned a lot, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching this painting video. And please share with your friends, and thanks again for watching.